Right, so I want to talk about James Charles. So, yesterday we posted a video in which it was titled, James Charles would like to be uncancelled. Please. And it was the title of an interview he did with Cosmopolitan, and it was the worst article probably ever written, I think. It was from this journalist who wrote this article talking about James Charles releasing and launching his new makeup line called Painted. Who cares? No one's buying that shit. And the article was talking about the false allegations that James Charles had to face of being accused of being all these different things, right? And it was one of the worst written things ever. It was an excuse piece. It didn't have facts in it. It lied. It just bad narration. It was not good whatsoever. I really, really, really thought that it was quite terrible. And it openly admits that James Charles, and it says that James Charles's brother hasn't spoken to him in like 2 or 3 years because of the allegations, but then is trying to make James Charles the victim in all of it, and I think that says enough anyway. And it goes on further, and it says, James Charles is being accused of all of these things, and, only 2 of them were true. And it was 2 16-year-olds that he was acting that way with, but they lied, and James thought they were 18. And I went on a full rant about this, where, for me, if you're a 23-year-old and you're trying to get with just turned 18-year-olds, that is equally as weird to me if you were getting with a 16-year-old. I am so sorry. My genuine, raw opinion. So he's saying, oh, I got with 16-year-olds, or I was flirting with 16-year-olds, or I was sending ass pics or whatever, but I thought they were 18. That is not the defense to me, because that is equally as weird to me, being a 23-year-old, or whatever age he was, 22, 23, being that, and thinking it was an 18-year-old you were asking for all these pictures, and it was actually a 16-year-old. The 16-year-old makes it illegal, the 18-year-old makes it still fucking weird. And that was his defense. And the article's like, there was a Twitter user who was posting about these allegations and was posting so many fake stories, and that was why no one took the allegations, the allegations tried to ruin James's life, and it became this big hate mob. And this entire article is basically saying we need to forgive James Charles because this Twitter user was actually lying, and none of the allegations are true against James Charles. But in the same article admitted that James Charles admitted that some of them happened. Now, that Twitter user was none other than Dennis. I don't know what his second name is, Def Noodles. And this is something that I have been on Def Noodles' ass for because it really bothers me. And as you all know, I'll pull it up. A couple days ago met Def Noodles for the first time ever. We've had, our situations in the past, and a big problem that I had with Def Noodles, which was the source of one of our main problems, here we are a couple days ago, was that Def Noodles did a lot of damage in the James Charles situation. And no matter how much, I like Dennis now, no matter how sweet I thought he was to me, he really, 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 put attention on Twitter with posting story after story of James against, that then became the story of how many people were speaking out against James Charles. Most of them were people making up stories and stuff like that, and it took away from the ones that really happened. And it's something that I'll always be pissed at Def Noodles for. However, that was what the article focuses on. We need to forgive James because this Twitter user was lying about everything, even though the article admits that a couple of them happened. Dennis has now responded, and now with my new perception of Def Noodles after meeting him, and, he's a nice guy and stuff like this, I would love to hear what his defense is, because it's something that still bothers me about Def Noodles to this day. Like, something I still really grinds my gears against, or about Dennis. So I would love to hear Dennis's defense to this article. So he's done a response on Twitter. We're going to watch this, and then there's this thread that he's done responding to it and has showed the original thread. So let's get to this.
Discussing it. James Charles was trending on Twitter yesterday as people were just essentially reminiscing, if you could call it that, on the multiple allegations that James faced about 2 years ago about his inappropriate interactions with people who were not of age. James ended up later in an apology video confessing to 2 of those. And he later ended up deleting that video and then posting another video where he essentially disavowed all of what he had previously said. And without naming me,
Is Dennis wearing a Jake Paul t-shirt? Jake Paul?
ended up calling me out
Oh,
for a
here we go.
thread I had put together
Here we go.
where I had essentially compiled multiple allegations that different people had made about James. Now, before we look at that thread, let's see what James and this article say about me indirectly, because they never mention me by name. However, they do link to articles about my downfall, which is a very interesting thing to do in an article.
So petty. Sorry, it's so petty. But anyway, this article holds no merit, is so unprofessional, and is so bad that them linking articles about Def Noodles' downfall is not surprising to me, because the entire focus of the article was to shift the blame of what James Charles did onto Def Noodles, which I also don't agree with, because they're using Dennis as a scapegoat. You know what I mean? Like, both things piss me off here. Both things whatever happened to... It makes me so angry. It makes me so angry.
James is trying to rehabilitate his image. Let us begin. I don't want to sit here and fucking mope and whine and cry because nobody wants to hear it. It says Charles singing into a plush couch in his casual open living room. I had to do a lot of thinking, like, okay, babe, this is your fault. No, you're not a pedophile. No, you're not a fucking groomer. No, you're not a predator.
You're just a loser, not a groomer.
It's good to see that James is trying to take accountability for what he did, but I think a lot of people on the internet specifically would disagree. His behavior was extremely predatory.
Yes.
At the time. I think it was pretty obvious to everyone.
Yes.
James was using his platform so that he could have access to people in his fan base.
Yes.
Who he wanted.
But the article also admits that. The article says that James even recently was DMing 17-year-olds who were lying about their age. The article... The article's like, we must forgive James Charles for these false allegations, but he's still doing it to this day. Womp womp womp, oh yeah, yeah. Bring me a little water now. Bring me a little water, Sully. If you did not know either of those references, that would have been very confusing. They're James Charles references.
And there is that whole argument of there being a power dynamic, and
there's not an argument. There is a power dynamic.
James is allegedly, seemingly pursuing people who are underage.
He is.
It was a very tenuous line, and it definitely became a very big discussion, especially when it was allegation after allegation after allegation after allegation, and at one point it just felt like it was nonstop. Like, when is this going to end? Anyway, with all being said, let's go to the part where James brings me up, because I think it's very...
So there Dennis goes, the James situation was just allegation after allegation after allegation after allegation that it was getting so much. Yeah, it was like that because you were compiling every single TikTok that spoke about him. So I also hope Dennis admits why he was doing that and the impact of doing that, and updating stories that were talking about him on TikTok immediately instead of fact checking them. And whether Dennis wants to admit it or not, he was being cited as a news source for many months in so many big publications. So there was a level of responsibility there, especially when dealing with allegations. So I'm begging you, Dennis, to acknowledge this. I'm begging him to acknowledge this because I really like Dennis now. I really like Dennis now. But this is one thing I can never, never, never excuse. So I am begging him to address or take some sort of ownership to that. Please.
Interesting that I was brought up at all in this article, considering that James is trying to take accountability. But I'm brought up in a very weird way, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. The allegations triggered more complaints against Charles. They were primarily disseminated in the form of TikToks filled with screenshots of flirtatious conversations Charles had allegedly conducted with a number of male fans. A few of the reported accusations, like the initial one, were serious and claimed to detail inappropriate online interactions between Charles and minors. Other claims, including an incident in which Charles allegedly called someone daddy, felt muddier. Almost all of them were eventually rounded up into viral Twitter threads by a controversial poster who keeps track
Dennis.
of internet scandals, now under fire himself. Now, when I first read that paragraph, I was very confused because this article is supposed to be James taking accountability and trying to present himself as a changed person. So I was very confused when I saw that I was brought up in this article in the fashion in which I was, essentially being blamed for all that information being out there. Yes, I made two mistakes covering the James Charles situation. I covered one allegation that was false, it was a joke. I didn't do my due diligence in that one because it had literally hashtag joke in the description. And I also covered another allegation that ended up being false, and the person ended up apologizing for making the false allegation 2 days later. In both instances, at the time, I tried my best to take accountability by deleting the posts and then apologizing immediately. I have since addressed this situation numerous times, and I will continue addressing it. But I think it goes without saying that I was very surprised that I was brought into this, because why would James want to attack my credibility, which I have none left? So I don't really think there's much to attack there. So props to you, James. But why would he feel the need to essentially use me as a scapegoat? Need I remind you, folks, that he confessed to two of the allegations. So it's not like they were all made up. Two of those very serious allegations, he confessed to them. And his excuse for doing it...
All right, let me stop. Okay. So here's my thing. The Dennis thread was a lot. And I'm happy to see him admit that, he wasn't doing a good job with the thread. And the thread was being cited in news sites. So whenever false stories were getting added to it, it then made the real stories look inaccurate. So I'm glad he's acknowledging that. And I'm also more so focused, now that I've gotten that out of the way, and it's not excusing Dennis, but it's something I've harped on and on and on about, which is that really pissed me off that Dennis did. I want to harp on in the more important conversation here, which is what he's currently having, which is why in this article are they focusing more on the fact that Dennis covered an inaccurate story about someone pretending that James Charles groomed them versus the ones that were real and using that as a way out, but then also admitting in the same article that James Charles did this to at least two 16-year-olds. Wait. 16-year-olds. So, Dolly, stop that. That's not a nice noise. It is so bothering me. It really is bothering me that the article is putting more blame on Deaf Noodles than James Charles for doing what James Charles did to children. You can call Deaf Noodles out for posting inaccurate stories in the thread, but also in the thread was true stories that James admitted were true. So do not dare try to cancel out the real stories because Dennis was posting everything. So how dare that journalist who did a shitty job with that article? And I'm more so focused on the conversation here on why they're using Deaf Noodles as a scapegoat in what James Charles has done to children. Oh my god, I sound like Cody Tyler whenever they were like, these are children. Sorry.
was that he was desperate.
That shocked
And
me.
this came out of the man's mouth. Anyway, another thing that piqued my interest was how this Cosmopolitan article never mentions me by name. However, they make sure that they link to an article that outlines...
I didn't know I had that in me.
Finds my downfall, which I don't have a problem with. Everybody knows at this point that I've been canceled, okay? That I've had a downfall. Be it by my own hand or by the hand of others, however you choose to see it, I think it contributed greatly to my own downfall, and I take full accountability for all the dumb shit that I've done. But I just think it's amazing that in this article that's supposed to be about James's rehabilitation, here he is discussing my downfall as a way to
Scapegoat.
essentially discredit all the allegations that were made against him. It just feels like a very weird
it's deflection
out that James is giving him.
It's a way of, a lot of people, most people do not like Def Noodles, and it's a very easy way out of, having to talk about what you did to children. But don't worry, we can do both at the same time. We can call Def Noodles out and we can focus on what you did to children.
Himself, and a lot of people in the commentary community have said that I am partly to blame for the fact that James has this out. Yes, and they're correct. I've heard Adam McIntyre, I've seen Paige talk about this. I've seen
Oh, sorry, hearing me. Oh my god, AB, I have my alerts off just because I'm on here, but because I'm watching a video. Wow, you don't need to do that. Thank you so much. AB just gifted 5 subs. Your stream was... I loved your stream the last night. The setup was... I really loved it. And watching the Fuzzy stream, even though I have no idea who Fuzzy is. But that jaw was swinging. Thank you, AB. That's super sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope you're having a good day. What time is it in America? Like morning time? 9 a.m.? If it's 9 a.m., then my accuracy is great from... my accuracy is not great. It's 2 p.m. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, thank you so much, AB. I hope you're doing well. I really, really, really appreciate that.
Several other people say that...
Hearing my name there just, like, caught me so off guard.
The community have said that I am partly to blame for the fact that James has this out. Yes, and they're correct. I've heard Adam McIntyre, I've seen Paige talk about this. I've seen several other people say that, yes, I am to blame. I should 100% take accountability for that. I fucked up. James now has an out, and he has even my cancellation to use as a way to further try to remove the stain of these allegations, which he's confessed, from himself. Anyway,
yeah,
let's go
and
back
I mean,
to the Cosmopolitan article.
This is something that I said in a video, Jesus, I made a while ago. I was like, James Charles is going to be able to use the fact that Dennis, even if Dennis had just covered one inaccuracy, James will be able to use that to get out of it, which is exactly what it's done. However, I think James shows up a lot worse in this. Sorry, hold on. I'm just incredibly distracted by Def Noodles' Google searches. The rise and fall of Def Noodles. He's Googled himself, Def Noodles. James Charles done with being... So he's watching a YouTube video. Failed to open NVENC Codex OBS. So he's having trouble with his stream. Mid-century credenza IKEA. Is he on IKEA buying stuff? Mid-century... Let me Google that. What's he buying? Mid-century credenza IKEA. What's he buying? Ooh. Oh, it's a nice little cupboard. Ooh, look at that. Love it. You should 100% buy it.
In the end, substantiated or not, multiple media reports indicated that at least 15 boys and men had accused Charles of inappropriate behavior. Charles says now about the breadth of the allegations.
Sorry, how much? I'm trying to find a price for y'all. Shopping. £400? Oh, that comedy club money, mama? £400?
The source of where the list came from was not doing any sort of research, no fact-checking. Some of the screenshots depicted consensual conversations between adults, he says. Others were completely fake and never even happened. Now, as I said, only 2 of the ones that I reported were fake. But with all being said, it's really weird for James to put the onus of the accusations completely on me.
True.
Yes, I was sharing these accusations, and my posts at the time on Twitter were going very viral.
True.
My account was blowing up at the
True.
time. Anything I posted was getting a lot of attention. But it goes without saying that a lot of those posts were originally posted by the young men with whom James was having interactions with. In fact, all of these young men posted the allegations initially on their Twitters and TikToks and other social media platforms. And what did I do? Yes, I compiled all of them into a thread because that shit was getting crazy. Somebody had to organize all of it, and I guess I just took the mantle and did it.
All right, okay. I'm gonna stop watching this video because the background is starting to make me feel like I can't focus on him. Like my eyes are like closing in on myself. Like it's starting to make me feel like I'm falling down a hole. So we are going to go back to reading what he has said on here. Okay, well, I mean, he's basically saying that he messed up with his news coverage on it. However, he was also posting true stories. James is using him as a scapegoat, all true, and that these posts were also on social media going viral, and he was just compiling them in a post, which is also true. So I guess everything he's saying is true. And I think my main problem here is James using Deaf Noodles as a scapegoat out of him talking to children. Does he still have me blocked? Well, maybe if I was under 18. Alright, so this is what Dennis said. James Charles indirectly mentioned me in his Cosmopolitan article, even in his comeback article. Seriously? James Charles indirectly mentioned me in his Cosmopolitan article for my coverage of the PEDO allegations that were made against him 2 years ago. Here are my thoughts. Are we ready? That was so Jeffree Star of me. Hi, how are you? 1. I created the thread attached below to help people parse through the countless allegations that were made against James in a time where it seemed like every day, there was a new one coming out, which was true. It seemed like there was new ones coming out all the time, and a big reason for that was Dennis posting them all, but okay. 2. James claimed the majority of the allegations were fake. However, out of nearly 20 allegations I posted, only 2 of them were false. Okay, we're going to look into that ourselves. That being said, I never included the false ones in the thread. I also deleted the false ones within minutes of posting them and apologized at the time. James appears to be deploying the same strategy he used in the video and open a conversation. He's using my name, which is true, he did say this ages ago. He is using my name as a way to give himself an out for the nearly 20 allegations he never addressed. He confessed 2 of them in a now deleted video. Oh god, I forgot he deleted the video in which he addressed that he did do these. I have received a lot of criticism for my handling of the coverage of the allegations against James Charles, true, and I accept that criticism. In retrospect, I should have never been covering such a serious topic with my limited journalistic experience. That being said, I do not believe that my lack of journalistic credibility or my mistakes in my coverage of the allegations should be used to exonerate James, much less when it's James himself using the narrative so he can wash himself clean of the consequences of his own actions. I'm speaking very quickly. That Red Bull is Red Bulling. If James wants to show the world that he has learned from his past mistakes and that he truly understands why his actions were bad, then he needs to show that. Purely saying that he's not a P-word, he's not a grimmer, because he's a loser, and blaming me for my flawed coverage does not show any growth on James's behalf, especially whenever it comes to serious allegations such as the one James has faced in the past. You cannot pass the buck when it comes to inappropriate contact with minors. I am a flawed person who's made mistakes in the past, but please do not buy the narrative that my flaws are the reason why James Charles gets to clear his name of allegations that he confessed to doing twice. Whew. So, yes. I think that is probably the best thing out of everything Dennis said. I am a flawed person who's made mistakes in the past. But please do not buy the narrative that my flaws are the reason why James Charles gets to clear his name of allegations. Well, I mean, James is using Dennis as an out, so I guess. But he has attached the thread. So this is James's thread from 2021. Hey, Morphe Brushes. Do they still have a Twitter? Didn't they close down? June. Why are y'all still tweeting? Didn't y'all shut down? I thought you shut down. Hello? Was it just their, like, in-person shops? Morphe too? Oh, is this their no makeup blanche? Like every brand does now. Oh, it's just the physical stores. Okay. Hey, Morphe, not sure if you're up from your nap. God. So here's a recap of things James Charles has been doing. Allegedly, SEXTING, 6 minors, confessed to 2, catfishing, and SEXGALLY, harassing fans. Maybe give James Charles another Kids' Choice Awards at Nickelodeon. He really loves them. Boy. 16-year-old talks about experience. Another 16-year-old. This boy is actually 16. This boy is 16. This other one is 17. This boy is 14. This was the one that was the youngest, the 14-year-old. God, I remember this video. These two guys got so much criticism for this video for no fault of their own, just like James Charles fans, which was upsetting. Another allegation from someone in James's hometown. More allegations that James was catfishing his entire soccer team. God, this thread was a lot. James Charles sending unsolicited nudes and requesting nudes from fans. Another James Charles fan he allegedly sent and requested nudes from. Another fan, James. So, here... This was the thing with this article. The article compiled everything, so it showed the level of how much was going on, and it showed what James was doing. However, the article came across, the thread on Twitter came across in not the way that it should have. You know what I mean? Like, when you're reading this, Dennis's thread is like, another fan, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old. And it comes across as just kind of like, wow, that's a lot of people. Because it's all being addressed as like, dun, 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 dun. The purpose of this thread, whether Dennis wants to admit it or not, was to basically overwhelm you with information to make it look as many things as possible. And there was a lot of things. However, it could have been done in a much better, cleaner way that would have made people listen to it more. Like, not adding every single update to the thread so that you have to scroll like this through the thread and then you're getting told this part's not true, so you're going back and, reworking that or whatever. I think that was the main problem with this thread. Another James fan he was sending nudes to, requesting nudes from. James allegedly groomed this kid, messaging him months before they hang out with him 9 days after he turned 18. Oof. Full TikTok, James Charles allegedly paid a fan for nudes. James Charles harassing Emma Chamberlain. James showing the world how he catfishes straight. So the article turned into something that took away from... Oh, Emma. The article took away from what it was supposed to do. And yes, that is Def Noodles' fault. And I have given him so much criticism for that. However, James Charles did the behavior. And James Charles is using Def Noodles' dwindling... Sorry, thread. I keep saying article. James Charles using Def Noodles' dwindled reputation to get out of this in his comeback article to sell more makeup is fucking disgusting, and we will not forget that you were the one that did this behavior, and Def Noodles, putting an inaccuracy here and there or whatever because this thread was so large does not take away from the fact that you sat your ass down in the video and acknowledged that you did this to at least 2 16-year-olds, so go fuck yourself. Another minor to the list, another minor. So you know what I mean? The way Dennis went around this thread was not good. He's being like, another minor to the list, another minor, another minor, another minor, another minor. It was so overwhelming that it became too much for people to really take seriously. Like if he was being like, another minor has came forward, this is their age, this is their story, that would be impactful. But whenever Dennis was like, another victim, another victim, another victim, another minor, minor, another minor, it comes across as incredibly overwhelming. And then whenever James hits you with the thread has inaccuracies, people are going to believe James because the thread is so fucking long. So Dennis was in the wrong for a lot to do with his thread. However, his thread covered a lot of factual shit, and James trying to use Dennis making a mistake here and there in the thread as a way to get out of this is absolutely revolting. Another minor, another 16-year-old, another minor. Oi. So yeah, that's my closing. I'm glad Dennis is acknowledging that, because it really is something that I, always held against him. Thank you so much, Princess. It really does piss me off. It's overwhelming. Someone said it is a bit overwhelming, but it's people's fault for not reading it entirely. But the overwhelming factor for me comes with how it was addressed. It was addressed as minor, another minor, another minor, another minor, another minor. So it really didn't. It came across as trying to post as many people. It was all the phrasing, and it was the way it was laid out. That was my problem with it, and that was why the general public so quickly sided with James when James was trying to throw Dennis under the bus. However, they're doing it years later in his comeback article for his new makeup release, and I think it's absolutely fucking revolting. And I think it's absolutely revolting that James said this, and I think it's even more disgusting of the... Who's the journalist? I think it's even more disgusting of the journalist and of Cosmopolitan to platform this. Gabrielle Bluestone. Not a good journalist. And Cosmo should be ashamed of that article. So yeah, that's my take on it. I think Dennis knows that the article wasn't done in the the thread wasn't done in the best way. I'm glad he acknowledged that. But how dare James Charles try to use Def Noodles as a way out of this? For someone who this article is about cancel culture or whatever, you're relying on cancel culture not liking Def Noodles for you to get out of this. Two can't be true at the same time. Yourself. Anyway.